y'all to the VRNation Station. We're diving deep into vacation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you again for coming back to the VRNation Station podcast, the go-to platform for vacation rental professionals across North America. My name is Jamie Hansen. I'm your host.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Jamie, for having me. Dana Moraru with Tahoe Signature Properties. We are in North Lake Tahoe and Truckee, California, and have been in business for about 13 years, I believe, and counting. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Awesome.
We
So
manage about 53, 54 luxury vacation rentals in the area.
I didn't know you were up that high. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And you got big properties.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Many
You
are
don't have a
big.
lot of smaller ones, right? Like, do you have 2, 3 bedrooms?
We do, yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So Dana and I have known each other for a couple of years now. She's always been a go-to for a lot of things property management wise, and she's been very helpful. And her and I were talking about Instagram, my favorite social media platform. Don't ask me why. Probably because it's the easiest to scroll through constantly. But the one thing that really chaps my ass is really these guys who are out there, and they talk about, I'm 23 years old and I retired yesterday because last month I started an Airbnb and there I got all sorts of money and my cash flow, and now I'm jet setting all over the world. It's like, what are they talking about, right? So it's like, it takes me every fiber to not get on the comments and be like, bullshit. But realistically speaking, it's an interesting conversation. So obviously, Dan and I, you were talking about it, and you just got another property in, and I thought it was a good topic to have or at least a topic of conversation to say, like, let's talk about this a little bit, right? So we've got a couple different sections. So like the myth of overnight versus short-term rental riches, which we all know is not necessarily truth. Reality is starting out. A lot of people, like, I have conversations as a business development director, having conversations with people about what they're really looking down the barrel of from property and that's just as a property manager, not necessarily as a DIYer. And then as far as like skills no one tells you that you're going to need, then burning out, which unfortunately happens to a lot of our do-it-yourself friends. I think a lot of them burn out after a couple of years. Some of them love it. Conversation with Brent, like, he really did enjoy it to the point that he's growing. Good for him, right? That's terrific. I mean, he's definitely got a huge technical advantage over a lot of folks. But I think that, he's got a lot of juice, brings a lot of energy to the table, and then maybe we'll just touch base on some final stuff. But let's just jump in on the myth. So I got to ask you, is like, in what you've seen, what's the most misleading thing that you've seen on a social media platform in regards to owning a short-term rental?
It takes 10 hours a week. It's definitely a part-time gig, and you put about 10 hours a week. As long as you have it all automated, you're all good and ready to go. So that's probably the one that gets me the most. I'm not saying that's impossible. Sure, you could probably do it, but you have to have all the systems in place and you have to have people hired to do that, because it might take 10 hours a week for you to just check on things and make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to. But you can't run a short-term rental with just 10 hours a week.
Right.
If you do, you're probably not doing a good job.
Well, it's funny. I laugh about those things too, but I don't laugh too hard because Brent was telling me that it took him about 10 hours a week. I'm not kidding you, but it's because he's got so much automation in place that it knocked that time frame down. And I think people don't really understand, like that whole starting up piece of it, right? So when I think of the misleading on social media, the part they blip over is, my wife and I worked 40-hour week jobs, and then we just decided to invest in a short-term rental, and then we made enough money, we rolled into another short-term rental, and the timeline is what drives me crazy. It's almost like, yeah, we did this in a year, and it's like, dude, not a chance you got that much return on investment in a year. Like, I'm trying to think of like the markets that we work in, what the return on investment is for some of these properties. And I guess if you paid 100% cash for a property and you have a very, 6-figure ass gross revenue type property, maybe you were able to roll that.
Yeah, and those homes do exist. The only thing that people don't disclose or make, I think, when they on all the Airbnb stuff you see is they don't explain those things, right? Because yes, there is a maybe 1% of properties out there that would bring this income, and they are workable homes. I have one of those, but not everyone is, and not every property is.
Right.
So that's the problem. Is and then you turn around and they offer coaching services. The other day, I got approached myself because I obviously, follow what's going on and follow other people. And I followed somebody, I guess. And then he gets back to me and goes, "Oh, what are you doing? What are you here for?" I'm like, "Just, I guess, following." And he goes, "Would you be interested in coaching?" I'm like, "Yeah, at this point, I think I can coach myself."
You coach me
But
every day. What are you talking about? Look at
no, but
me.
you know what I mean? Like, and the account is new, you can tell, and he has,
Right.
couple thousand followers maybe. So it's like, okay, I guess we can all start somewhere and we all need to start somewhere. And I'm not bashing them by any means, but it's more, do you actually have the experience to coach? Or do you
Right.
have one STR and you think you know everything and you go out there and let's do it? So yeah.
Right. That makes a huge difference. And it's funny because I challenge all of our listeners out there. If I'm wrong and you know that you can get properties in an area, direct message me which area that is. Please. I'd love to get involved. No, seriously though, because it's just like, I don't know. I look at some of the, the coasts, like West Coast is tough. I mean, the housing prices are just so high. I mean, it's like
Right.
everywhere's high. Right. So even your buy-in numbers are, and I guess maybe if, grandmama left you, a condo on the beach that's meticulous, and you can roll that over and start, sure, you could probably get a good cash flow off it, but geez, it's just tough because I see a lot of young people going, well, Jamie, you work in that industry. Like, what do you think of this? It's like, I think you guys need to get off social media, get a job.
It's true.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it is. It's interesting. So I guess, when I think about it, one of the questions I wrote down was like, have you ever tried to replicate anything that you'd seen online as far as just to realize like it's a total, BS statement?
I don't know that we necessarily replicated anything online to turn out to be a BS statement. I mean, social media following and how to post, how to create all that stuff, right? Learning how to create the reels and the videos and all that. As far as what people recommend on social media when it comes to investments, not really. We've done different things in the past with my husband, from building to flipping. It takes a lot to learn and to get to a point where you feel comfortable with, okay, I think I'm ready to go into and actually own a vacation home and keep it, right? You got to know, you got to research the market. That's the main thing, probably, is research the heck out of the market. And example, in our area, the majority of the homes are 3 bedrooms. Do you think I'd buy a 3-bedroom house as an investment? No way, because that's what the
Right.
market is saturated with. The homes that perform the best here are 1-bedroom cabins. Not kidding. Those are the ones that bring the most income. I have a 1-bedroom cabin at the lake, and not necessarily at the lake. It's got a filtered lake view. It brings about $60K for the owner. Not even a 3-bedroom can bring this much around here. It's very rare that happens. So it's a market. It's a huge gap in revenue from one to the other. So you do have to do your research.
And that's an actual 1-bedroom like home, or is that a condo?
1-bedroom cabin, just a tiny
It's a
1-bedroom
condo.
cabin.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah,
It
that's
allows
interesting.
privacy.
That's
There's not a
interesting.
lot of them around here. And, a lot of couples want to go on a getaway, just a couple, right? So those are perfect
Right.
for that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Tahoe is kind of that way. That's it. This is actually a great way to segue to the reality of starting out, right? Because we committed previous to starting our recording, we committed that we're not going to sit here and just beat up on Instagram and all the content creators that are out there trying to get follows. So let's just talk. Let's get down to the reality of what it takes to get up and running with a short-term rental. And Danny did a really good job of calling it out. So we already talked about it. Like, you need to research the hell out of the area. Right. And you
Right.
talked a bit about, and I don't think we ever really use this term enough for people to understand, but things like supply, right? Supply versus demand. What people don't wrap their head around is like, it's a marketplace. That's really what you are. I mean, it is a home, as a DIY, do it yourself or whatever. You're really putting your stuff out on a marketplace. You're part of that supply, right? And that marketplace is going to determine what your demand is. So, going back to your statement, right? So I'm a new person, I'm coming in. You've already said you got to do your homework. How does somebody go about figuring out how many 3 bedrooms there are in an area. Like, what would you do to figure that out if you didn't have your systems?
Well, AirDNA probably is a good option for people to use. Just don't rely on the knowledge your real estate agent has. Well, they're great at selling homes. They don't know what's going on in the vacation rental market. We get calls all the time from investors and just second homeowners that want to purchase. Hey, do you think this is going to be a good investment? How much can it bring? So do talk to a local professional that knows the area, knows the type of homes that do well. Any type of town you go to or region, they have neighborhoods, right? Where here, closer to the ski resorts, homes do better. Closer to the lake, homes do better. And a real estate agent, while they know those things, they don't know how much a house is going to bring. So talk to a local professional that has been doing this for a while. So our plan for the future is to get something in Hawaii because that's our happy place. What am I going to do you think? I will do my research as much as I can from afar, right? I'm going to go and visit and choose, but ultimately I'm going to talk to somebody that's there and see what they say as far as, this condos, because you can have a 3-bedroom in one area and make 30,000. You can have a 3-bedroom in a different area, make 70, 80. It happens here too. That's where I would start, I guess.
That's actually really good advice, because I know even up by us, and I tend to give, when people call me at Cabino and they ask a question about, like, yeah, I'm looking at buying a property. It's funny because I find out usually it doesn't happen for a year, right? I get leads calling back after a year, and they're just like, oh, thank God you're still there. I remember talking to you and you gave me so much. Because I kind of,
Right.
I have a little bit of that run of the mouth where I'm like drowning them in info. And the reality is like, well, I really like this property. And you're like, are you going to be
Right.
like staying there a lot yourself personally? Then, sure, it's a vacation home and do what you want. But if it's an
Right.
investment, it's probably not the best spot as an investment. So I know that when I run through it, I try to do an analysis. And I do know, for folks
Mhm.
that are listening, if you're not familiar, there are several systems that will kick out an analysis that are pretty accurate. I look at like Key Data as one.
Mhm.
Their tool is fairly accurate. If I had to guess, I would say it's probably 20 to 30% accurate. I've got using an Excel sheet, I can get to roughly, especially in markets that I'm managing, I can get to probably about 10%
Mhm.
accuracy, but that
Yeah.
gets all blown to hell when it comes to every year by year, it changes so much. But anyway, so we talk about like going in and finding out supply. So I'm new and like, oh, well, I definitely want to get a 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom cabin on the lake in Tahoe, because that's going to be a good investment for me. Like, what's the next step? Like, so you've got a realtor, you've got financing. Let's talk about financing. A lot of people, I think, are not 100% sure about financing. Dealt with a few mortgage companies that have interesting ways to finance short-term rentals. Like, what's your go-to as far as financing is concerned, and how do you coach people on that?
Well, I mean, most people, when they get to us, they already have that part figured out, to be completely
Okay.
honest. When I looked for myself, there are companies out there these days that specialize in vacation rentals specifically. So we've become big enough to where now these types of homes are actually being financed. So that's an option as well. They know exactly what the house is going to bring. You don't even need to present a pro forma for them or anything. They'll do everything from start to finish. So those are good options for you if you're looking for an investment property. But I mean, depending on the area, cash is always the best thing, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. Back to the Instagram reality. Like, hey, kid, you want to get rich quick?
Right.
Rob a bank. Yeah, no, the reality is like there are some other lendings. I know that we have a
Hmm.
few lenders up in the Northern Rockies that are doing DSCR loans.
Hmm.
Um, the risk portfolio on that type of loan is really something someone would have to really do their homework on, I think, and of course, yeah,
Right.
cash is king. Like, hey, I could pay 1.2 million, out of pocket for this. It's like that. There really aren't many people that can do that.
Right.
Is it 1030? I think you can use 1030 money if you're selling other
Exchange.
properties and do an exchange on it to save from tax
Hmm.
monies. But it is interesting because it's to the point now that even when I do homeowner acquisition push, I'm really starting to focus more on people that have like 50 to 100% equity on a
Hmm.
property, even from a property management service perspective, because if they're taking loans out at 7, 8, 9%, it's going to be very tough to turn a profit one way or the other.
Right.
So it's an interesting thing. So that we talked a little bit about financing. I guess the one thing is like, I'll ask the question, even though this is going to be a fun combo. All right. So let's talk about some of the stresses that Instagram doesn't really highlight about running your own property, so to speak, like guest issues, turnover stuff, chaos, emergency maintenance. I know one of the best stories that you told me before was when Tahoe had, was it like 20 feet of snow or something crazy? And you guys
Right.
were delivering water on snowmobile.
It's food. We were
Yes,
delivering
food.
food.
That's right. Food. Well, that was our very first podcast, I think, was the emergency
Also,
supplies discussion.
right.
Yeah. So, I mean, so that's it. Like I laugh a little bit. So before we started, we were talking about just this year, just this year alone. And, I had this story about the mayflies, right? So we're up by Yellowstone, trout capital of the world, right? Henry's Fork. And people travel from all over the world to come and fly fish this area because it's just such a unique environment with the bugs that trout eat, right? So they call them mayflies. Mayflies could be several different species of bug, but they come in May, hence the mayfly.
Right.
We had a guest show up and claim that they were being overrun by giant mosquitoes and left a 1-star review, turned around and drove away because they couldn't let their children out of the car for fear of being eaten by giant mosquitoes. What do you say to that? Like, the logical "were you bitten" would have started, but yeah, this was like a 1 o'clock in the morning arrivals. Yeah, we're having fun with that. You have any fun ones that you want to bring up?
Well, the most recent was about the color of the sand. We have this property on Lake Tahoe, and they got there and stayed a night. And when we checked in with them the next morning, they go, "Oh, everything's wonderful. We love the house, but we expected white sand, and instead the sand is black. We're going to leave a night early. Can we get a refund?"
That's
Right? So just move a couple miles down up, and Tahoe has all kinds of, there's rock beaches, there is sand, there's all
right.
kinds of colors of the sand too. So that was hilarious. I'm like, okay, I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah, that's unique. And it's funny because it just, the stories are funny, but it's one of those where I don't think people and they don't share this in
Right.
the Instagram, like a lot of people don't, especially when they're trying to stay positive. And there are definitely positives being in the industry for sure. But I think one of the things people don't realize is that the knowledge of how to manipulate the system from a guest perspective
Yes.
has definitely grown. Right? They know if they complain about cleanliness, they know if they complain about bugs, right? They know if they complain about, and this kind of fits back into the whole narrative, and I'll beat up on Airbnb because they just switched their review mitigation center over to AI, which is a treat, let me tell you, because the questions coming from them is interesting. But it's just like guests started to learn, like, hey, this is the way that I can beat the system. And if you don't, and it almost holds a homeowner hostage a bit, because if you don't present something, even if you presented a 5-star level of service, all they got to do is say these 5 keywords, and if you don't give them a refund, they'll give you a 1-star review, and that's going to make it. And the cost of those reviews against what you're going to pull in on the next rental could be thousands and thousands of dollars. Yeah, it's definitely something people don't talk about, is the impact of Airbnb on the actual industry.
I think because guests book directly with Airbnb, they think that they are staying with Airbnb, when in fact they're staying with a local property manager or a local homeowner, whoever, but it's not Airbnb they're staying with. So as you know, people behind the typing on the phone are a lot more courageous than than when they know they're dealing. Right. And in fact, the reality is they're dealing with the small business or another human being. So would you do that to another human being when you fully know you're taking advantage of them? I don't know. But that's what happens when the perception is that you're staying with Airbnb, and there's no persona behind Airbnb. It's just an Airbnb.
Right.
So
it's like a hotel room.
Right. So it dehumanized the industry quite a bit. And that's what we have to deal with now. That's part of it. But truly, running a short-term rental is not a walk in a park. You got to have the hospitality mindset if you're going to deal with guests. I would not attempt this if you don't have the patience or have not been in hospitality or trained or are not geared that way. Don't do it. It's not worth it. Hire somebody to take that on for you.
Right.
You're probably going to have more upset guests and bad reviews than you realize or care to. After hours, you got to be available after hours, or have somebody that is available. You have to have somebody local to take care of your emergencies, cleanings, and everything, really. If you're not local, relying on technology is great, but the technology doesn't solve boots on the ground. So there's a
Right.
lot to it that I don't think people think when they go into. Many do their homework, and I think those are the ones that are successful, but a lot of them don't. And then you find, because I had this year, I think 3 or 4 homeowners that called and said, would you take me on? I've been doing this for 3 years by myself. Here's my house. They get burnt out. So there's that part. We get
Yeah, that's
burnt
true.
out as professionals too.
Not me. I love it every day. I just wake up.
I do love it every day, but I still get
to the next mayfly problem. I love it. So here's a question. It's funny because I interviewed Brent Bloom last week. Awesome guy. He's a newest member of the board. So he also he had started off doing it himself. He has a couple properties now, but he's still doing it himself. He had a very distinct statement that I asked him. So I'm going to ask you a similar question. What mindset or skill set do you really feel needs to be in place to succeed, that they don't really talk about on Instagram? I think they infer it, but I don't think they really talk about it. So what's the skill set or mindset that's absolutely mission critical if you're going to get into this business?
Well, I think there's 2 parts of it. For a do-it-yourselfer, right? You got to have the human side, hospitality mindset, and know how to deal with people. You have to be a people person, really, and really care for your guests to have a good experience. So there's that side, right? And then you have to know something about accounting and finances. If you're going to be successful, you have to know how to balance those numbers, balance your books, and keep an eye on that. And obviously there's a revenue goal and your expenses and all that. So those would be the 2 probably. And then, so then you get into the marketing part, right? Do you do a good job at marketing? Do you know the channels that you're advertising on? Are you optimizing for the channels? Have you hired a designer and a professional photographer to do the listing prep for you? There's a lot to it, really. And you have to know a thing or two before you go live. And after you go live too, managing those channels, back to it. You gotta teach yourself how to do it. You gotta understand the algorithm. So yeah, it's and it's all doable with time, but it also is it's an investment. And when you say it takes me only 10 hours a week, just imagine all the knowledge you have to gather. Do you have it when you go in? You probably don't. So yeah, it takes time. It takes time to learn. And me, as an example, I still feel to this day, and it's been 13 years, well, probably more, but with Tahoe Signature Properties, I'm always learning. There's always something new. Our industry evolves. Every year there's something different happening. AI is a big one right now. 2 years ago was something different probably. We're newer. We're not an established industry where everybody knows where everything is, right?
Right.
So you got to keep up with the new trends. You got to keep up with the new in order to succeed. So that's just what it is.
It's
and
funny.
I feel
So what you've done in a very detailed fashion is,
Mhm.
so Brent broke it down to, you've got to treat it like a business. And you literally hammered on like every aspect of business that's there, between customer care, finance, technology, marketing, sales, operations. And that's really the case, right? Like you are a one person show, especially if you're doing it yourself, like you're a one person show trying to take care of it. And I think a lot of people, this is my opinion. I'm going to post that to everybody. It's my opinion, just so you know. That's my opinion. But like when I go up to, a lot of our listeners, if they've been paying attention, know that I have kids that go to school in the Northeast, right? So I've stayed a lot of short-term rentals in New York and Vermont. And one thing that I find interesting is like the culture there is very interesting in regards to how they run their Airbnbs, because the majority of them are Airbnbs, right? So they're like, I've got my 1 bedroom above my garage that I rent out type situations. People have different feeling about how they would rent out a room on a property and things. Some people just kind of inherently understand what's needed to be done. And then they just kind of tinker away on the technology and they seem to be successful. But, from my perspective, that seems like a completely different planet than what you're talking about in Tahoe, right? Like, and I think when I look at this Instagram thing, they kind of make it out like it's mom and pop renting out the garage, but then they show the video of some mansion, while these people are out walking around. And it's just like, I just don't think they're doing a service to people, especially when I don't know why they're even posting a lot of the stuff. Like, are they trying to get, trainings or something to sell? Like, I don't know what they're selling. It's kind of weird.
sign up with one. Sign up with one, you'll learn.
Yeah, right. That's just what I need. More email in my box.
We
So,
do we
go
do have a few groups in the industry that are providing education for, those homeowners that do it on their own. And I praise those homeowners that sign up for those education that are legit and have been around for a while. There's a few there out there. Yeah, if you start that way and you are taught from beginning to end, this is how you buy, this is where you buy, this is how to choose the right property, design, decor, professional photos, how to do that description right, how to post. They go as far as getting homeowners into creating their own website, which is very rare. And it's something you don't find quite often, right? Because
right.
we don't want to be reliant on the channels. That's the difference between us as a company, as a professional company, and a homeowner that does it themselves. If Airbnb goes, where tomorrow, they don't have a business. They don't have a place to advertise. They're dead. That business is gone. We, on the other hand, do a lot of direct marketing and do get a lot of direct bookings. That's a different story. You have a brand that's been there for years, right?
Right.
So that's kind of the difference. It is hard for a homeowner to be at a level that we are. But there are some homeowners that do an awesome job, really. I've stayed at some of those homes where I'm like, oh, wow, I haven't thought about that. That's very handy. I should go back and implement it. So there are cases both ways that we can, I guess what I'm getting at is we can all learn from each other. And I'm very
Absolutely.
proud at what VRNation's doing as far as bringing us all together, because there's definitely value in both, on both sides of the, what do you call it? I don't know, spectrum, or both sides of
Yeah,
the
for sure. Absolutely. I
coin.
totally agree. And I think it's funny now that you say that. I mean, I still remember, I was down at like Phoenix and I was staying at a place and I saw how they did some setups. And I was just like, especially with like neon lighting and stuff. I'm
Yeah.
like, man, that really brings a different flavor. It really brings something unique. And then when I saw how it was marketed online, that was where I was like, oh, that's actually a really sharp way of doing that, because the picture draws your eyes, like right from a list. You have 5 listings to draw my eyes. And so there are, you're right, 100% things that you can learn from people, especially when they're, they've got juice. That's what I always talk about. People are short term, like they're doing it themselves. They got juice. They're excited about it. And those are, I think, are the people that are in it for the right reasons. For anybody that's like, think they're going to, get rich quick, it doesn't work that way. The reality is it's just like, it takes time. I mean, from my perspective, and I don't know about you, but from a ramp up time on a short-term rental, I mean, I use 3 years as my benchmark. I said it's going to take 3 years for this property to season, because you're on different marketplaces, direct marketing. You need to get, build some good review base. You need to market towards your return guest base. Those are the kind of things that, it's funny, even talking to Brent as well. He's like, yeah, I haven't really done a lot of marketing to my prior guests. And it's like, it doesn't cost anything, man. You could just, you put together a couple. I mean, it could cost you some if you're going the inventory route. I mean, if you're not peppering them with like, mailers and everything else, but it's just like, you could definitely, you can do a lot of different stuff to try and bring in bookings that aren't going through Airbnb.
Of course.
Interestingly enough, so kind of to tap on another point, I've listened to people talk about STRs as a wealth building strategy. I know people that have done well by it, right? They roll it. It's I've got a few of my favorite homeowners up in Idaho that that's kind of their, I'm not going to say monopoly game, but it's really more like that's part of their retirement, and they're trying to like maximize the revenue so that they can turn around and buy another property and maximize the revenue to turn around and buy another property. And, I'm like, that's a great way to go. Definitely puts you in a certain risk level. So I guess the question that I would ask you is, if you're going to buy multiple properties, are you buying them all in one spot, or are you buying some in different areas? Like, how do you diversify?
This is so it's been a battle, I think, between me and my husband. We love going. We love going to visit John in Santa Cruz. That's our one of the favorite spots, because we love the ocean, right? So it's only 4-hour drives from 4-hour drive from Tahoe. So you hop everybody in the car and you're there, right? And I think we're there at least 4 or 5 times a year. Let's buy something here, because I could rent it from Tahoe and I know how to do all that. Let's just, oh, it's so far away that I won't have hands-on experience, because he takes part of the operation side of our business with the maintenance and making sure everything runs smoothly, to him, he can't really grasp or wrap his head around, how am I going to get to an emergency?
Right.
So that's where and this is partially why we decided to purchase something in Tahoe and start here, because we're here and I know we can be successful with something that we can have eyes and um, the proximity to it. Would I buy something that's further out? Yes, I would probably. But then again, I think, to me, as me being so hands-on so many years, it's going to be hard to rely on that cleaner and rely on somebody, you find a good maintenance person or whoever to take care of your house. So yeah, it's not the easiest thing, I don't think. People make it sound much easier than it is, because here, with your cleaners on staff and them being paid well, and they're here in town, and still there are misses and things go wrong and somebody didn't show up, the weather, many things, come into play, right? 4 hours away? Am I going to jump in the car, go drive 4 hours away to clean my place
Right.
sometime? No.
Right.
Or attend to a maintenance issue. And there's a lot of people that have them throughout the country too. And it's not just a drive, it's a flight sometimes. And it's doable. It's just, I think, to me, it would add a whole other stressor to my life that I don't really need.
Right. And
So
it comes back to understanding your finances, right? So, I mean, I know
100%,
other property managers that have properties on the opposite side of the country, but they don't manage
right?
them themselves. They hire a local and then they
Hmm.
work with that property manager. So, I mean, it's,
Yeah.
it kind of goes to speak for itself. I know it could be, we have demographics, in Tennessee and Florida,
Hmm.
Utah, Idaho. It's always it's a tough, especially starting a new market, right? Like it's always tough because you
Hmm.
have to find trustworthy people because
Hmm.
they're really the face of your brand. So
Right.
that concept of having to drive 4 hours is definitely it's a real thing. One last question on
Agreed.
the building up, as you're building up a portfolio.
Hmm.
And I hear this a lot, and I'm curious because I have my own opinion. Is it better to buy turnkey, or is it better to start from scratch or build?
So that really depends on your skill level, right? Are you a builder? I would build. If you don't have or know anything about it, I mean, obviously you can hire somebody. If you have a vision, that's an option as well. We would probably build if we had the choice, but there's plenty of already and ready to go homes. You just have to get the right property. It comes down to that. You either build the right property that's going to be perform at the top of the market, or you buy the property that's going to perform at the top of the market. If you buy it and it's not there, you get a designer to design it for you if you don't know what you're doing. And many of us don't, right? Those LED lights you're talking about, that's what sets apart, I think, kind of the distinction between the homeowner that's getting a second home and they want it designed to what they like because they're going to use it, and the investor. The investor goes for the wow, and the one that's really after it. They will choose colors that you don't have in your own house. Do I want to go stay in my own house when I go on vacation? No, I want an
Right.
experience. So I will choose the LED, the crazy situation that you mentioned, because we just stayed in Palm Springs not too long ago in one of those. It gives you, it's different. It gives you that, oh, I went on vacation. Not only was the area cool, but the house I stayed at was cool, right?
Right.
And as far as pictures go, choosing the 5 pictures that you display, same thing. Like, you have something to display that catches the eye of the person that's looking. When you decorate the house in beige colors and nothing to it, it's hard to catch the eye, and it's hard to choose 5 pictures that work best. What are you gonna
Right.
put, right? So I don't know. There's a lot of thought has to go into it. That's just all it is.
Yeah, no, I
You
hear you.
gotta
And it's
have
funny
all.
'cause so my opinion was more along the lines of, depending on what it is, like turnkey is something where the speed to market, right? Because that's
Mhm.
oftentimes cash flow kills. And that's where a lot of
Yeah.
investors or people that are buying, they're like, oh, I think I could buy this property as my second vacation home if I buy
Yep.
it and then I rent it out. And then that cash will offset and I won't be broke. And it's like, maybe, but, right? Like, why did the other people sell it? Right? Was it actually making money? That somewhere, like we live in an interesting time, especially when we're up in Island Park.
Mhm.
Properties look a lot alike, especially the little
Yes.
guys. Like you get a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, even 4 bedrooms
Yeah.
now, which is the mass majority of the supply that's up there. They all look like cabins, and they all
Mhm.
have little bears and little moose and snowshoes, and it's like, that's cool. I mean, I
Mhm.
love that. I mean, I enjoy that. But, when I talk to homeowners, I'm like, if you're going to buy this property, you got to do something different. You got to go put in like a kick-ass fire pit. You got to clear out that backyard and mow the grass. You have to, and I always tell people too, because like you're saying, it's an experience, right? So when people bring guests, think of grandma, grandpa are bringing guests or their grandkids as a guest to one of the properties. And I mean, the grandkids don't even know where they're at. They don't know if they're in their hometown or if they travel by air by 10. They don't know. They're kids. They don't know anything. But if you get a pretty cool looking carved eagle in the back of the, like a totem eagle or something like that, and put it in the backyard, those little kids are always going to remember the eagle cabin. They're always going to remember the cool eagle, especially if there's games and things in the back. So I try to tell people, it's like, if you're going to buy a short-term rental that's already in existence and it's already there, and you're going to keep it pretty much the same as it was, you've got to add some flavor, because otherwise you're just inheriting somebody else's potential loss leader. And that's why it's like, think about it as a business, spruce it up, add some, if you're buying a restaurant, generally you're going to add some stuff to the menu. Otherwise the food's just not going to be the same. All right. Well, we've been on the phone on the podcast for a while here. And, I think the big thing when I think of takeaways, boy, there's some good questions here. So one of the things that I guess I would ask is like, what's one truth every aspiring short-term rental owner needs to hear before they start? What's one global truth that if you could say, this is the one thing you need to take away, what is that?
That's a good question. I mean, it's not as easy as it seems, I guess, is what I would say.
I was going to say the same thing. It's exactly what I was going to say. It's not easy.
No, you really have to do your homework before you purchase what you purchase, and know what you're doing and know which direction you're going. And do get advice from a professional and listen to their advice, because trust me, we've been around long enough.
Right.
We know what we're doing. We want you to succeed. I'm not giving advice just because I want you to be successful, right? So that's one of the things that,
Yeah, I hear you. The one thing I always tell people too, from a universal truth perspective, is it's a commitment. It's not a try now, buy later. It's a commitment. It's going to take 3 years to really get a good feel for what the revenue possibilities are. And it's going to cost more money than you think it's going to cost to get that business off the ground. It will turn a profit, but that return on investment might push out 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, depending on what you have to put into it to find success. So, but I mean, I again, it's one of those where when I have somebody cash out their 401k and retirement fund to start buying short-term rentals, the answer, maybe, if you could find that unicorn.
Do it only because I know what I'm doing. Does that make sense?
It does.
I think I know what I'm doing. So I know what the next property is going to be that we buy. I know the type, the size, the everything, right? I know where I'm at now. I know what my current house needs and what I'm adding to attract more summer or winter guests. But for somebody that hasn't done this, it's a trial and error for years and years and years until you get to a point where, okay, I think I know what I'm doing. We all started this way to a certain degree, right? Because if you ask any property management owner or an owner of a property management company, they kind of stumbled upon it. Either they owned a house and decided to do it, and then next thing you know, all their friends are giving them houses. Or, I mean, there's very little people that chose this because they chose it. I did, but a lot of people just stumbled upon it. So nobody came with the knowledge. We all figured it out. And that's what happens as a homeowner. That's what you'll do. You'll spend a lot of time figuring things out. And I think if you ask me, I would probably hire a professional to do it for you, because they're not figuring it out if you get the right professional, of course, because some still are. And buy the right house and give it to somebody to do it for you instead of you trying to figure out for years and years. So
it's good advice. It's good advice. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to keep you forever because it's Friday afternoon and I know you got plenty of check-ins that you're probably making sure are going well. For all the folks listening, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you very much. Make sure you follow and like us. We are now on Spotify, soon to be on the Apple podcasts as well. Josh is working on that. Josh is currently out of office, so I'm kind of swinging on this myself. But ultimately, thanks everybody for joining in. And Deanna, thanks so much for your time. It's always a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you. Likewise, Jamie. Appreciate it. And
Thanks
reach out for advice, everybody.
That's right. Anytime. Please do. And you can always send it in your in the comments in YouTube. You can put it in Spotify. There's contact information there. Or you can always reach out to VRNation.com, which is Bevy. And I really encourage people to look at vrnation.com because there's a lot of information there that's free and that you can learn from. Thanks again, everyone. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Welcome y'all to the VRNation Station. We're diving deep into vacation rental sensations. From management tips to the latest creation, join us each week for some sparkle and conversation. VRNation Station, tune in and feel the thrill. We're talking